Shall we?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get this thing started. Special meeting of City Council. Calling to order at 6:30. There he is, Councilor Schulte pulling up right as we speak, so we need to find another microphone for him. Yeah, I think so. There we go. I hope this is on the live stream. Patrick,
Oh, wow.
pulling
Like Dukes of Hazzard.
I was thinking more like Back to the Future.
You gotta take it with more speed next time.
Yeah.
Like the Dukes of Hazzards did?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. All right, so we've got everybody. Open forum, nobody's here. Close the open forum. Should we wait for Craig until to kind of proceed, because things will proceed pretty quickly once we get started here, I think. So may as well pause. Yeah. There he is. There you go. We're observing social distancing. All right, so moving to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is short, typical three things. Approving this agenda, approving meeting minutes, and the payment of bills. A lot of this is picking up stuff that we weren't able to do last week for that. So unless there is a desire to pull one of those for conversation, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'd make that motion.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, so you may notice on our agenda here that we don't have much, if anything, on it. Part of that is because of the resolution that is on the desk in front of you. This is Resolution 2020-03, which is a declaration of local emergency. This is one that Mike and Chris wrote up to capture the situation that we find ourselves in. So my intention is to declare this emergency at this meeting, and I believe that if the council wants to adopt this as a measure for the council, then we would just have a motion to accept Resolution 2020-03 as the declaration of emergency. So before we move ahead with this, a little bit of why we want to do this. So the county has already declared an emergency. The president has already declared an emergency, and that means that there are potentially relief funds that would be available for this. A declaration of emergency would be necessary to identify ourselves as a place that would be in need of those funds. So that's the reason that we're doing this, not because we have any confirmed cases in Cook County. To my knowledge, there is none. There are none north of the metro.
St. Cloud area.
Yeah, those counties. So the language that's included in the declaration, the number of whereases that summarize the situation, and then a number of resolved points that summarize the city's response. So we can do this a couple different ways. We can have a motion to approve it, like motion second, and then we can discuss what should be added, removed, if anything like that, or we can have that conversation before we move to approve. So does anybody have a preference to that?
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-03.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Now, this is where the discussion comes in. So is there anything in here that we should discuss?
I think we should go through it point by point, make sure everybody understands what you're potentially approving here.
Great.
The mayor has the authority to declare a local emergency. He doesn't need the council to do that. So that's done. The local emergency declaration by the mayor can only last a couple of days before the council has to come in and say it can last longer. And so it's that 3-day period of scheduling a meeting and getting everybody together that Then the council gets to come in and decide. So the point one is Jay declaring an emergency. Point two is the council agreeing that it's an emergency with this resolution that'll last until the council says there's not an emergency anymore. Point three is just saying that we're going to be changing how we operate while the emergency is in place. We can talk about what that means specifically if you need to. Point four is, well, kind of the same thing, I guess.
Different ways of saying it.
It's internal versus external. Point five is that we're going to be asking for aid. I don't know that we've incurred any expenses yet, but I can definitely imagine us doing that if this lasts a couple of weeks. So that's really the key point to this.
Or more.
Point six is something we do want to talk about. We don't think that meetings like this should be held while you're declaring an emergency, or at least for the next couple of weeks, kind of in solidarity with the strategy that this country's using right now to limit social contact. So we've already told the rest of the boards that they should think about not having their meetings unless they've got something that they really need to deal with. And if they do, that they have their meetings through technology rather than in person. We think that makes sense for the council too. We have the technology to do that for you all to participate remotely if you have access to the internet or to the telephone. So you can either participate just via phone and audio, or if you have access to the internet, there's an ability for us to do some document sharing as well and video sharing even if we need to. Having said that, I think that the public's access to those meetings is not the same level. We can do as much as we want to try to provide that access. It's just harder for them to participate in the meetings. It's also harder for you all to participate in the meetings. And so my recommendation would be we don't try to tackle regular business or even ongoing issues that aren't pressing or a part of the emergency, but rather we just deal with the emergency while it's declared, and those meetings are like this one. Hopefully that won't last very long. We can get right back on track. And then the last point is just that we'll be telling people this was declared. Just to give you an update on what we've done already in the organization, the staff has been in conversation for, a solid week now about what we're doing regarding this, and things changed so fast in the past week that it seems like daily there's something new going on. Last week, we contemplated the idea that the library might need to close down as a way to limit social contact, and particularly the trigger being if the school's closed, we would consider doing it. Well, then over the weekend, the school's closed, and so we've taken the step already to close the library until the times that the school's open again. The park office is also closed. There's really not a need for that facility to be open to the public in order for them to conduct their business, and there's really not a lot of demand for their business right now, so that's an easy one. City Hall is still open, although we've been getting out notices and information to people about how they can access city services without visiting, and that's our strong recommendation, that people do that. If it gets to the point where that's not working, we can think about closing that door as well, at least just locking it and having it be by an appointment basis. But we're very able to provide any of the services that we have there remotely. The liquor store is an area of real concern. We have a limited ability to keep people separated while they're in that facility. And we don't think that there's any mitigating we can do that is going to provide a guarantee of safety in that place. We have talked about, and pending the outcome of this conversation, we're intending to put in place tomorrow takeout only. We'll barricade the space so that customers can come in, but they can only get to the counter. They'll only be able to use credit cards. The credit card machine will be 6 feet away from the register so that the folks that are working there can maintain some distance from customers. customers can come in one at a time, ask what they want, our staff will go get it, bring it to them, customer will pay for it, the customer will have to take it out themselves. That's the best idea that we've got to stay open and provide service, but try to meet the spirit of social distancing, which is really difficult in the space over there.
They don't want to or can't wear gloves and accept cash?
Well,
We don't
it's,
have enough.
We'll run out of gloves pretty fast. We don't have a great facility over there for them to wash their hands regularly, and we'll be out of sanitizer pretty quickly. So,
the concept of single-use gloves too is something that needs training to be able to be effective as far as, you put the gloves on, you handle something, you take the gloves off.
Well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I
like when
mean,
you go to Subway or restaurants now are doing takeout,
yeah.
and that's what's happening. So that's why I wondered, we have restaurants doing that. Is that something that we are able to do? But if we're unable to get the products to keep them safe, then,
But what I understand in talking to Chris mostly is staffing seems to be a big issue. Going long term, like going forward in the long term.
Well, and that's also, there's been communication with the staff, with city staff, about that as well. I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about that.
We've told all of our department heads that if they have staff that are in a position where they have to be in contact with the public and they're not comfortable with that they don't have to come to work, and that if they can take the leave that they have available to them. If they don't have any leave, they don't want to be in their public contact position, but they do want to get paid. We have lots of other tasks that we can have them do that don't require public contact. So that offer is out there for folks. So for instance, at the library, a lot of that staff is just not going to come in. And they're okay with that, that's their choice.
is that currently closed? Because I haven't seen
Yes.
that anywhere.
It's been
currently
closed.
closed.
It was closed in conjunction with the school closing schedule.
I just didn't see anything on Boreal or WTIP, and that's what I kind of follow locally. So,
I'm sure that it's been out there, but we'll be continually talking about it. At the liquor store, there's a number of the staff members that aren't going to be coming in to work the counter. There's a pretty limited number. So we'll be changing the hours for sure. If we decide to stay open at all, then we'll be open from 10 to 6 so we can get single shift rather than double shift days. We won't be open on Sundays anymore while this is going on. Yesterday was probably the busiest Tuesday we've ever had over there.
So-
It's supposed to be the slow day.
So when we talk about the liquor store, this strategy is something that's been developed to try and keep the service available for the community, try and keep our employees working, to earn money if that's necessary. The council needs to weigh in as to whether or not this is an appropriate action for the time being, or how are we going to move forward with that. If there is a desire to pursue something different, then we have to be prepared to develop that strategy and or put it in place. Whereas this strategy is developed more or less. It's not simple by any stretch of the imagination, but it does check the boxes. We have a number of concerns with this, as far as the needs of our employees, the health of our employees, those kinds of things. We're trying to check all the boxes with this. So that's that's where we stand right now as far as that's concerned, unless there's other thoughts from the council on that.
Well, I don't know who ultimately is going to make the decision on what's going on over there? Is that city staff and Chris, or is that something where we say, based on what they have going, I've talked to Chris about, asked him like, well, what, after we had I came in on, whatever, is that Tuesday, Monday? Monday? Yeah, I guess it's Wednesday. On Monday to talk with city staff and some of those things. I've talked to him since then, and he's, passed the information from that meeting on to them, and looking at like what their availability is. I guess I didn't hear much about the like curb side or that setup that you're talking about, like blockading and limiting. But is it a situation where if they run into, or do we have to like make the call? I guess that's my point. Do we have to make the call, or does he make the call based on what staffing is?
I think there's
Or do we
two
give them
ways.
permission? Because
Here's the authority I've given him. He can change his hours to only be open when he has staff available, meaning if he has no staff available, then he can be closed.
yeah,
But I'm not, neither me nor he, going to say we're closing the liquor store without you telling us we're closing the liquor store.
I think
So it might be modified drastically the way we're trying to provide that service. But if you tell us that it's not worth it and take a couple weeks off, then we'll do that. If the state comes in and tells us like they've done in almost every other place, then we'll close it. But at staff level, we're not gonna shut it down unless there isn't any staff there.
I personally think that like if they, because we don't understand the day-to-day staffing, you know, short of a couple conversations, but understand exactly what they are presented with or what Chris is presented with as far as who is comfortable and not. I feel like it would be responsible for us to say, you know, to give him that flexibility and that freedom to do that. And maybe, well, you're saying we need to approve that, right?
Well, I'd prefer you didn't defer that decision to him. That there's a lot of politics around the idea of closing a liquor store, and I'd rather that, if you're willing, that you own that decision.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we can't do a true curbside in which it would take one or two people, if, depending upon demand, in that if people want to, they can call in, order, give their debit or credit card.
I don't think you can run a card without physically having it. I can't.
We don't want to touch it.
Yeah, but
And
you can't
we
run
can't
it.
take their number.
I can't, maybe you guys can, but if you give me a number, I can't run it.
No, they need to put it in the machine.
Yeah.
And we
Okay.
don't want to do that for
Credit
them.
card companies got rid of that because of the new rules now. So you have to physically have the card.
So-
to charge somebody something.
They're gonna have to provide their ID too.
Yeah.
What number is on your
8.
So
So that might be a little trickier, but.
the suggestion that was made about, you know, barricading it, having the employee go get the product
Mhm.
and provide it, then the only points of contact that the customer would have would be touching the door to get in and out,
Right,
and then putting their card into the machine.
right.
And those would be and then taking their stuff and leaving. That would
Are
be the only point of contact.
Are we expecting staff then to clean the door very frequently? Because I think that would be,
I don't think we're going to be able to provide any protection for our customers that are coming in, other than separation from other customers. They're just going to have to, you know, wash their hands.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that, looking at protection of our employees and protection of the public, I mean, I just don't see how we can justify keeping facility open when you have that interface, I mean, there's so many ways for this to be transferred, whether it's through just handling the product or handling the door or the airborne contagions that are being spread. I mean, that's why it's a state of emergency.
Right.
Is that this is unprecedented in terms of, our current history. And, I think everything that we can do to minimize those contacts, I mean, we're already seeing businesses suffer through the shutdowns, and, I think we're going to be another business that's going to suffer through this shutdown. We don't know how long this is going to be, if it's, 10 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, I mean, reading today, government has a 18-month plan, I mean, that's pretty serious. And
Right.
so are we willing to pay our employees then? I know the city of Duluth has sent people home for 2 weeks on paid leave, but it's 2 weeks. I think that's something that we have to look at and consider, is what is our timeline and what are we willing to do for staff?
Well, and we also have to keep in mind too that the services that the city provides, that the city employees provides are their services that we rely on a, you know, on a
I'm
daily basis.
I'm not saying one way or another,
Well,
I'm
and
just asking the
I'm just
question.
adding information to that as well, that if we tell city staff that, you know, not to come in for 2 weeks, that's gonna significantly change the way that, that operations around the city work.
Mhm.
Separate the idea of city staff coming in from the facility being open. There are a number of city staff that have to continue to work through this.
Right,
Because they're providing essential services.
right.
Electric, sewer, water.
But it's, you know, we can lock the city hall door, but we can't not be open. We have to provide those services
Mhm.
that folks rely on.
Yep.
The liquor store can be closed, and we don't have to tell our employees, don't come to work. We can tell them, if you need to work some hours to get paid, we have work for you to do. And it'll be hard for us to treat one group of employees one way and another differently when we're saying, you're all essential, you need to come to work, even if you put yourself at risk. We've closed your facility, go ahead and stay home and we'll pay you anyway. I think that's asking for trouble if we try that.
Well, that's why I'm asking questions. What do we do?
Well, I mean, I
And
think,
if we end up in, you know, it's 2 weeks from now and we have a lot of less work for people to do because everything's as shiny as it's ever been, then I'm assuming that the federal government will have stepped in with some kind of assistance for that. And I think we'll have some guidance as this moves along. If it ends up being a really long term, we'll have to come back and talk about it some more.
Mhm.
well, the state is already suggesting or offering through their emergency declaration, you know, advances in the unemployment compensation, no waiting periods, so there is consideration to that. But, I mean, I think all we can do is deal with what we have immediately in front of us, and that's a serious health situation. I don't know that we can make a plan that's gonna last more than a week or two at this point, because everything is changing so fast.
Right.
And I don't think we need to.
Yeah.
I don't think so
When
either,
it comes
right?
to paying our employees, I can pay them still. I've got work for them to do. If they need to get paid, I'll give them work to do, and that's not a problem yet. And if they're unwilling, then that's their choice. I mean, everybody has to make their own decisions on the best way to protect themselves in this case.
So, I agree with Tim, and probably maybe all of you, I don't know, but I think it is hard to put that on Chris's shoulders. I think that we should make that call, and I think that we should shut it down. I think the question that I have is, based on what Chris has told me, he has availability for staff. Do you make that call to say, like, it's shut down tonight, or it's shut down, he basically said limited hours, like you were saying, so it can be covered in a single shift, 10 to 6, and basically Saturday would be the date. No, not open Sunday, would shut down at the end of the day on Saturday.
So you're saying keep it open until Saturday?
Well, that's my question.
And then
So if
close
if
it down
can
after that?
come to agreement that we should shut it down, then the question is
When?
if it is really an issue of concern for both public and,
Employee.
public health and employee health. Is it a matter of doing that now and trying to, or do we give it a couple days for the sake of?
Those couple days are gonna
Stocking
be
Busy.
a madhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just ramp up the potential risk to our employees and to the public. If we tell people we're closing on Saturday.
Maybe a longer notice would help. If you're gonna close it, it might spread the business out longer, but,
I know that one of the things.
you know what I'm saying?
I think it'll just be every day we're open until we're closed is gonna be our best day ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
The governor also has issued a,
What has? sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, just adding to the conversation on this, the governor has also, told people to weather this in place, to like stay where they are and to like don't go out, don't do stuff kind of thing. And right now that's at the level of suggestion. So he has not made an order to do that yet, but I've been in conversation with with Representative Eklund and Tom Bach. And I haven't heard back from the governor's office yet about his intentions for that. But they both seem to think that that's coming down the pipe. That it probably won't be it won't be very long until that suggestion becomes an order. In which case, I don't know how they enforce that. I don't know how that gets played along. But we're already seeing pretty significant closures, as far as, or pretty significant businesses on the North Shore deciding that they're not going to host anyone, they're not going to accept new reservations for guests, and things like that. So services are already going to be massively compromised on the North Shore. So if we decide to keep the liquor store open, that will be one of the few things that will be available. Whether we see that essential or not essential. If we choose to close it, then I don't see that as harming anybody significantly, especially if we anticipate that there's going to be financial assistance coming in the future for this situation. For me specifically, and just to keep us all on the same page, we still have a motion and a second on this resolution, 2020-3. One of the things that's really informing my perspective on this is a conversation that I had with Dr. Kurt Farchman up at the clinic, who is handling the clinic's response to this. The clinic and the hospital have both been, they're on high alert, and they've pretty much completely locked down the hospital and the clinic, except for people with appointments that they know are coming in. Part of the reason they're doing that is because the facilities do not have the necessary equipment to deal with severe symptoms of this virus. And even if we did, we wouldn't have it in the quantity that could potentially hit the community. So when I hear that changes the conversation. It becomes a little bit different than just a conversation about convenience at that point for me. It becomes a conversation about oh dang, we could really get hung out there really, really badly, because when the Twin Cities gets hit really, really badly by this, they have a number of level 3 trauma centers with ventilators and things like that. We have none of that. We have zero of that. And transferring people to Duluth in a situation like this is no better, because Duluth does not have the resources to serve their own population within the city limits, let alone the surrounding area, which is how they are designed as a medical center. But something of this quantity is something that is off the charts as far as ability to respond to. So right now, like I said before, we don't have any confirmed cases in Cook County. When we look at what's our responsibility for this, is it to close things down, to isolate, so that we don't get it from someone, and so that we thus don't spread it to anyone? That's the thing that it's up to the council to make the call on this. Personally,
I think in doing what we can do, shutting down the liquor store is one of the things that we can do that reduces that threat to our employees and eliminates that interface with the customers and
From anywhere.
I mean, I just think that this is a broad public issue, and we need to take serious actions to make sure that we don't end up having cases here and not being able to deal with them, because we don't have facilities and we don't have the means, and if it starts to spread here, it's a real serious problem.
so we should definitely continue that conversation, see where that conversation leads. I'd like to bring us back to the motion on the resolution itself. We have 7 points that are on this resolution. Is there anything else that we should add to this?
Well, the point number 6, with regard to the conducting business by telephone or electronic means, can we just talk about that a little bit and how that might happen and how long a period, because it says in here for the period specified, but I don't see anything in here that specifies a period.
Well, it's a.
Number 2 says that it hereby extends that local emergency until such time as this resolution is
Okay, so
rescinded.
that undetermined date,
Yeah.
so it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
So-
as long as we say it is.
yeah.
It's the
okay.
emergency period.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
So is in those, when you were talking, Mike, about that
Yeah.
part of it, were you saying the public interaction when you're doing call-in video conference is pretty hard to do, obviously?
Yeah.
But what about the, like, recording and communication side of it? Like,
We can still do what we're doing with this meeting and live stream it.
okay, that would be that would be, I guess, one thing that I was hoping you would say.
Yeah.
As far as public comment, that would change the public comment where, you know, people who wanted to give a public comment would then have to either email or call that in.
Yeah.
And then it
Email
would be,
probably, right?
Yeah, and we just don't get a lot of comments like that, so it'll put a little chilling effect on the ability of people to do that.
right. It changes the goal is to basically change the experience of the community as little as possible. We've gotten people used to us having meetings on the second and last Wednesdays at 6:30, and then they're live streamed and on YouTube and all of and that's when they can come to make a statement. We like that. We want to keep that consistent. This is definitely not that because we
Mike,
can't show up.
You had said that at those meetings, we would likely only conduct business that was related to the emergency.
Or that's just necessary to continue our regular operations. Something comes up we have to do, like paying bills, for instance. The next week's meeting, North House was going to give their annual report. That was on the agenda. My recommendation would be we put that aside.
Yeah.
And
I'm think-
that
They're
type of
completely closed
issue just
anyway.
all those get set aside until this is over with and we're back into our regular meetings.
How about things like, the Highway 61 project where things are
Variances.
progressing and,
If you want updates, I can give you updates without you meeting, and I'm happy to do that. When there are decisions to be made and they're timely, because they're related to a project that's happening, then we'll have to get it on an agenda for you to consider, even if it's a little more difficult.
Mhm.
And there could very well be with that project. We have a change order that's
Mhm.
going through the process to remove the stormwater treatment vaults, for instance, and then that'll require some council action at some point. I don't know that it'll be in the next 3 weeks, but if something like that did come up, where this is a project that's ongoing and there's a timely issue, we'd want to try to deal with it in the meetings that they're happening. But something like the park board, where they're talking about, golf course rates, well, I think you can skip that for a month or two, or for the whole dang season if you had to, and it wouldn't be the end of the world for that. So, and so those types of meetings, I think, we'll just set aside. Planning Commission, their regular meeting is in a couple of weeks, and there are a couple of applications that people have put in this month, and I think we'll just have to delay it. And whether that means we've got to extend our 60 days on a variance application, it's just those types of issues, I think, are worth people being able to dig in and understand what's going on. That'll be harder for us to do. Maybe we'll get good at it and then we'll decide to try it anyway. But I think it's better to set the expectation that we're not going to try to take on too much while we're meeting that way.
and I think that's a good short-term, goal. My concern is that this could go on longer than
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks, and if it's 6 weeks or 2 months or further down the line,
Right.
then what happens? How do we conduct our business, and, do we decide to take on other
Well, let's go back
issues?
to the liquor store, for instance. If we're closed, then we're not just gonna go dust bottles. We're gonna think about, if we're still closed in 2 weeks, how are we gonna operate? I mean,
Right.
we're gonna make plans for, how can we open this back up, even if the emergency continues?
Right.
And it'll be the same way with this. If next week's meeting, the agenda will be pretty limited, But we'll be spending time with you all this week and next week beforehand to make sure that that's worked out and you know how to do it and that it functions. And we'll continue that, learning about the best way to deal with more complex issues remotely. And we'll just get better at it. And then if we have to continue it for a lengthy time, we have the technology in place to do those sorts of things. We just need to practice it a little bit. And if it means there's some compromises that we all have to make in how those discussions happen, I don't know how to avoid that if it's a real emergency.
And like you said, Tim, before, this is something that is changing daily, you know? And so by next week, when we have our next scheduled meeting, we may have better information. We may be able to make a better call. As far as the call to make on the liquor store, I think with the information that we've been given now, though, and the suggestions that have been made by the CDC and by the state and by the county public health, it seems to me like the best idea would be to cease operations until we have better information, or until we can get better at providing the service with lower risk to both customers and to employees. So there, you know, there is going to be a learning curve on this, a significant learning curve. We have the benefit of being a very small community that really likes to look out for itself and look out for its members. So that's definitely in our favor.
Can we?
That's it.
So if we said, when were they planning on implementing the curbside?
Tomorrow.
I guess that's one thing I was thinking about is, and I don't know, it's not a final service.
Well, let's get back to the resolution itself. So there's 7 items. We had some conversation on number 6 about how we would be doing meetings. What does the council think of? I think it wouldn't be a terrible idea for us to add like a number 8 to this. That basically summarizes like social distancing and the suggestions that have been made by the public health and by the state and by the feds to basically just stay at home, like to just, you know, limit all social contact, et cetera, et cetera. It's implied in this, but it also, we're seeing, so I closed my bed and breakfast. I canceled all of our reservations, and I've had people contact me today asking if they can stay for a month, etc. And I know that the East Bay Suites has had this as well. I know that Cascade Vacation Rentals has canceled all of their reservations. I'm calling this quarantourism. People are trying to quarantine someplace else, self-quarantine not in their home, and have people come up here to do it. And I don't think that's a good idea. And you know, if we send the message to, you know, to the community that this is a stay-at-home kind of thing, that this is like a don't go out and do stuff kind of thing, then I think that we're all better off. Not sure how that would be, how we would write that, as far as in this resolution is concerned. It may just be implied, that may be good enough, but I thought that I would bring it up for conversation on that. So
I'd make a suggestion for you, Jay. I think that's an apple and orange kind of deal with the rest of this resolution, where you're talking about this resolution gives us the authority to actually create those rules.
Gotcha. So that
And
might
that's
be
not, we're not doing that.
Gotcha.
So, but you can make a proclamation now that says, I advise people to do the following.
okay.
Or, you know, something like that might be an easier way to go about it.
Yeah, that's helpful. Calling it an apple and orange situation. This one needs to do what this one needs to do.
Yeah.
And another one can do something else. So does that fit for everybody? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So then, is there any other discussion on the motion to approve resolution 2020-03?
no, as long as we can still continue to talk about the liquor store after this.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to get this,
Yeah, no,
wrapped up.
just
And
making
then then we can actually have a
Great.
thorough conversation, or a more thorough conversation on it. So, hearing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, thank you. The memo that we have here from Patrick is an example of how we would be handling meetings from here on out, so that's pretty important information. So let's continue discussion on the operations, on city operations, including the operations of the liquor store. Unless there's something else that you'd like to discuss. All right. So we've had some pretty thorough conversations about this. The city finds itself in an interesting position in that we have created a city-sponsored monopoly for the provision of alcoholic beverages in the city. So, the closure of the liquor store is a statement. It's also something that if we believe that this is in the best interest of public health, then that's something that we should do.
I would
So-
make that motion that in interest of public health and safety of employees, that we effectively, at the close of business hours this evening, close the liquor store until further notice.
So there's a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'd second it.
Motion is second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Carries. Okay,
Could
so.
we do a quick
Is there,
roll? Was that aye in favor or opposed?
Aye in favor.
Okay, and what did you say, Craig?
the motion was to close immediately, correct?
After
This
close
evening.
business tonight.
After this evening? Is there a timeline associated with this, or is it
I
just,
didn't
is it
know.
just gonna be day by day until
I think it's,
somebody
we can
decides to
revisit it.
change that?
I mean, it's an emergency situation. I think we can call an emergency meeting and
Just as easily open it back up.
make another decision, but.
Well, it
we're
takes city
waiting.
council approval to reopen it then, is that?
I would say that
Likely.
at this point.
I would think so.
That's
if
what
we're the
that
ones-
sounded like to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Is that a yes or a no then? It's 4 to something, so, or 5 to, for O. so-
Yeah, I know, so.
I mean,
Providing some type of notice, I think, would be nice,
We will-
but I don't know. Well, there's not gonna be much notice. 2-hour notice.
right, exactly.
1 hour notice.
So one of the.
No,
So I'm
it's-
just-
Yeah, you're talking about like last chance notice? Not gonna happen.
Not
And
gonna happen.
actually, I like the idea that it's not gonna happen.
Well,
Because
yeah.
otherwise it'd be
I
a
agree.
rush.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I do think that like I mean, and maybe, here's my thought, based on, I think the sensible thing to do is to do what the motion was and what we passed. But I do think that it's possible to look at, I don't know, it's just like how crucial is it, right? But,
Yeah.
that's my thing. It's like, well, it's just the liquor store, right? But, if there is some sort of way where, we come up, who knows? Maybe the standards will change, and.
Well, we need
I'd like to revisit it next week when we talk on the phone again,
Yeah.
because we'll have more information and know-how. I agree, it's not a life or death service that we provide.
Right. But,
But a lot of people are seeking to find some sense of somewhat of normalcy. And there's two things that happen in this situation. Good comes out of it, good people really step up and do great things, and bad people step up and do really bad things. And there's also a lot of people that are at home, and when you talk about quarantining and putting people in their homes, and if they're alone and they don't have people to talk to, and different issues arise out of that. I get what we're doing is for public, and I don't disagree with anything we've said here. But somehow, too, it's like, are we all just going to go in our houses and lock the doors and say, that's that, and maybe if I can talk to you over the phone? Because you still get to go to the grocery store, you still get to go to the post office so far, your mail's delivered if you don't live in town. It's not a crucial service, but what will change in 1 week, we don't know. And I would like to revisit this in a week, and maybe we need to do, those kinds of things, like we said, is going through our business that's crucial and deciding in a week, where are we at? What's happening? Have they come up with ideas where they could open, I don't care if it's noon to 5 PM, that they decide
2 days
if
a
we're
week or
really
3 days,
limited or a
whatever.
couple,
That's what-
lots of things can come out of it. But I would like to see us look at it again.
Yes,
In another
absolutely.
week.
Well, and the whole thing for me is how can we get this back to normalcy? How can we get it back to a feeling of normalcy, while still respecting these, the quarantine rules and all that sort of stuff. So I would expect that when we have a conversation about this next, that the liquor store manager and administration have suggestions for how we can do that. And, that would be in line with what the current
Mhm.
information is that we have. And if it's deemed that we just can't safely do it, then, then we're already in that boat.
And I think what the governor and the president have said, this is an extreme health emergency, and unless we take extreme actions, it's gonna get worse. And, it's already getting worse. There's still not a curb on this thing yet. I think
Well,
we have a
Test
responsibility.
kits are finally reaching out to people.
Well,
We won't have a realistic curve, I don't think, for a few weeks, maybe, but
Well, and
We'll see what happens.
even the test kits, so the test kits in the state of Minnesota, they're
You
on,
won't get tested.
You won't get tested.
you
You
won't
have
get
to-
tested unless you're
You
showing
have to meet all the
significant.
requirements.
people have been
Significant
mingling
And it's 72
without
hours
stop,
for the response.
up until this past week. So,
Mhm.
there's no reason to believe that there's gonna be any reduction in the severity of this until that stops.
He'll be happy.
Okay.
Yep. So
That,
Craig just asked a question just about whether Chris, our lawyer, was,
No.
no,
Well-
other Chris.
oh, the other Chris.
The
Chris,
manager.
that Chris? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think most of the staff will be relieved at the liquor store.
Okay.
Can go ahead if you want to finish.
It's okay.
That's fine.
So I think-
I don't mean to cut you off.
Well, no, I think following up with what Kelly said is great. I think I agree with that. I agree with Tim, but I think we should revisit this in a week.
Yeah.
And maybe something has happened where we can reassess it and maybe decide, yeah, we made a good decision, or, well, no, let's try to,
Find some, if there is
implement
some
the
sort of
curbside
safe,
thing,
yeah,
or
safe
whatever
middle
we can
ground.
do to minimize and still
Mhm.
have we're gonna get public reaction from this.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
we are.
But I think we need to let the public know that it's important, and we're gonna follow up with a decision within a week.
I think we would have.
And I think that's
yeah.
fair
I
to the
think-
public.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think like we would have had, we would have had, if we'd have said the end of business, or 6 o'clock on Saturday was the end, we would have had public reaction too.
Right.
And like Kelly was saying, it's like that could go either way, especially if all of a sudden you've got a line out the door,
Right.
one person in at the time,
Yeah.
So maybe.
That's the worst thing.
Maybe if we know we're gonna be back here a week from today, we're able to have that conversation of, to really think through, and maybe they have, and I'm not saying that you guys and Chris haven't talked about that already, and maybe there isn't a way, but maybe there is, trying to like think about and set up those, like that's best case scenario, because maybe then you can try it on a Tuesday, Wednesday or something, not a Friday, Saturday.
It's not gonna matter what day of the week it is. I told
Right.
you yesterday was probably our busiest Tuesday ever. It was $18,000 day, and that's like a Saturday in July. So
Yeah.
it's, if we're open, the phenomenon that you're seeing in the country is what's gonna happen.
Well, and I think having the borders now closed will be a change as well, because I have heard of Canadians being down here buying groceries and different things. There are people that are traveling throughout the state to smaller towns to try to buy supplies. Some of that may change. So I want to revisit in a week and see
Right.
what happens.
And on that note too, I definitely would like to give a shout out to the community businesses that we have in Grand Marais. I mean, I can't say how lucky we are to have, like, they've all been pivoting, like the grocery stores and other, places that sell stuff that you need, have been.
Gas stations.
Gas stations,
Yeah.
et cetera. They've all been
Everybody.
pivoting really, really quickly and really, really well for this. And I just have to really give a shout out for all of them for being responsive to this in a really responsible way. So that's been really impressive, the way that I've seen it, so. So those are the items that we have on our agenda. Is there anything else in regards to this that we should be discussing? We've managed city
Did you need to determine what
operations.
that was yet? We never answered that.
We're gonna call it an aye.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, his
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah, his motion,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then we need to add.
That'll be on your agenda next week.
Right,
Yep,
okay.
great.
Yeah, then it's fine.
And like I told you already, we'll be talking about, I mean, we know that we will open again. And
Right.
it's likely that this will not be done when we open again, unless we're gonna be closed for months and months.
Right.
So what we'll have to do with our time now is figure out how to make that as safe as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like I haven't heard owning a gas station, I don't know what's next. I mean,
Right?
grocery stores,
Yeah.
drug stores, gas stations. I mean,
Well,
we can pump gas and shut our stores, but, you know, we haven't heard anything.
That's when it gets ugly, when people can't get the things they want.
Yeah, we're
Things
trying
turn
to
really
keep-
ugly, really fast.
We're trying to
so-
sanitize everything every hour and, you know, clean and that kind of thing, and that's all you can do, so.
Right.
You
Yep.
know,
Is there any other business, any other anticipated things that we should be thinking about and talking about right now for the next week? I mean, that's a tricky question. That's a really hard question to
Yeah,
ask.
don't know
you don't
what's
need to
happening.
do anything like that
No.
tonight. I'll just let you know also that Will will be locking the city hall doors tomorrow as well. We'll all be there, we'll be open for business, but we won't be open for walk-in business. And if people need to be present with us to conduct business, we'll make arrangements.
Call, okay.
However, we have to, we'll have a sign on the door, they can call us, they can email us. Today was actually a pretty quiet day in the
Yeah.
office.
It was quiet
Yesterday was
everywhere.
not.
Yeah, I believe that.
And yesterday was busy, but today was,
So I don't think it'll be that much of an inconvenience, and honestly, I think 80% of the business we had is somebody walking in and hand us a check, and they just don't have to do that.
Right, they can just leave it
So-
on the door.
pay
Yeah.
online.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
No.
So all this will be updated on this, is this going on the city webpage as well as like our Facebook page and stuff? How are we? I haven't seen much on our city webpage really.
We've got links on the city webpage for the recommendations from the state and from the county.
Well, I've
I
seen
believe.
that, but I haven't seen what we're doing
What we're
as far
doing,
as
okay.
businesses. I think that we should be letting people know what
Yeah.
we're doing.
We'll be letting people know tonight, and we've been sending out notices, not just on the webpage, but actually just on the listservs locally, and we've got some logistics we'll have to deal with tonight now to prepare for this closing.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys, for all
Yeah,
you're doing.
thanks.
Yep, so we'll do everything we can to stay in communication. So the emergency does allow us to gather and discuss things under some different situations if it's necessary, but we're gonna try not to until, unless it's absolutely necessary.
Well, it's not a complete removal of the open meeting law.
No,
You
we still have to
comply.
advertise it.
Yeah.
And we're still gonna have agendas prepared before meetings.
Yep.
And if there's an issue that needs to be dealt with quickly, this resolution actually allows staff to do most of that. And I hope you trust me to bring things to you that I think that I'd rather you dealt with than us, but
Yep.
we can't imagine what those are right now, so
Right.
it's happening really fast.
So,
Okay.
anything else? All right, go wash your hands.
All right, everybody
Stay
go